There are 4 parts to this test. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Part 1. The ring pull can. You will hear part of a talk about the ring pull can, the container in which many drinks are sold. For questions 1 to 10, fill in the missing information.
A burglar alarm, a parachute, a crash barrier, a smoke alarm. These machines and many others wait to work. And when they are required to work, they have to work once perfectly. Among the most precise of these patiently waiting devices is the ring pull can. The ring pull can is a pressurized container used both to transport and to store, perhaps for long periods of time, a commercially sold drink. This type of can owes its popularity to the fact that it's totally safe. It's economical, it's easy to open, it doesn't leak, and it's not damaging to the environment. 4,000 of these cans are opened every second worldwide. Success depends upon the ring pull mechanism working every time. The entire product is based on a small cut in the can. Far from being a simple matter, it is an engineering masterpiece. The surface of the can is 0.28 millimeters thick. The cut is less than half that, being 0.09 millimeters deep, about the thickness of the average banknote. When the can is manufactured, the cut that is made in the metal where it is to be opened changes the physical condition of the metal so that it can withstand high internal pressure but also break very cleanly and very easily. The market requires reliability. Reliability means a clean break every time a can is opened, and a clean break is dependent on the size and shape of the cut in the can. This has been developed by working out how not to make it. Negative engineering. If the cut is too shallow, the top is difficult to open, and if it's too deep, the can could leak. If the cut had a V shape, it would break with uneven, sharp edges. If it had a square shape, the can might burst when it is opened. The depth of the cut in the metal is varied so that when the top is pulled open there is a 2-stage action. At the point where the top is pulled, the cut is relatively deep and the metal is very thin, and so it breaks easily. However, the top is only allowed to move a short distance before it is stopped by a thickening of the metal where the cut is shallower. This hesitation allows the can to release pressure, which ensures that you don't pour the contents over your neighbor. Additional pressure on the top is then required to complete the opening. The ring pull top must open every time. A significant failure rate would be a commercial disaster, and yet it has to be manufactured for just over a penny to a precision similar to that of a Swiss watch worth hundreds of thousands of pounds.
That is the end of Part 1. Part 2. What's on this weekend? You will hear part of a radio program in which future events are discussed. For questions 11 to 18, fill in the missing information.
I'm Charles Jordan, with you until 4 o'clock every afternoon this week and every week, Monday to Friday. As usual, I'm joined today by Claire Fielding to talk about what's on in and around the city this weekend. Claire, I suppose the big event this weekend is the Highfield Carnival.
Yes, that's certainly the obvious suggestion for anybody who's looking for something to do in the city this weekend. It has become a huge event, and there'll be an estimated 600,000 people heading for it. So take some sensible advice and perhaps leave the car at home. And get there early on in the day, I would say, rather than leaving it till later. The carnival is on Sunday and Monday, and there should be plenty to do for people of all ages.
I know a lot of the locals there complained that it started very much as a local festival, and now it's been taken over and they've lost control of it.
Yes, to a certain extent outsiders have come in, but I mean, it's inevitable that if you're going to have an internationally recognised street festival, then, it can't just be a small community-based event as well. And I think it's fun, and it still has a really good sense of local colour.
So, what else is on?
Well, we've got the Frankton Rock Festival as well this weekend, which is our longest-running open-air festival, having survived all these years. I suppose the real highlight for fans will be the appearance of the Dogs, who have really taken the music business by storm. They've got a big following. The other bands on over the weekend include a good cross-section, such as the Upsetters and the Intense and...
A lot of people I haven't heard of. Is there anything on I have heard of?
Well, let's see. A new production of the modern opera at night time is due to open at the Opera House on Friday. This should be a great production. It's a great spectacle to watch. I think opera has started to have a wider appeal to a mass audience now. Ticket sales are up, and I think it's going to stay that way.
OK, well, thanks, Claire. We'll take a break now, and then we'll be back to talk some more about some of the things we can do this weekend.
That is the end of Part 2. Part 3. The Explorer. You will hear part of an interview with an explorer. For questions 19 to 28, complete the sentences.
And our next news bulletin will be in half an hour at 3 o'clock.
Welcome back to the programme, where my guest today is Ranulph Fiennes, the explorer. We've been talking about the first 2 trips you made. You must have been accused on both those trips and all the subsequent ones of putting the lives of others in danger. You're obviously very conscious that you need a backup team and that you're responsible for others. Do you think you've taken a lot of unnecessary risks?
We spend a lot of time planning to avoid the risks, because the risks are liable to cause you to fail. But of my expeditions over the last 5 years, apart from the one I've just come back from, they've all been what technically could be described as failures. However, they haven't killed anybody. I mean, next year, maybe somebody will die, but so far in 22 years of expeditions, nobody's died, and that's over hundreds of thousands of miles of very remote areas. So the planning must have been reasonably good. And in terms of the risk factor, I think we foresaw them sufficiently to get the right equipment and the right training so that we didn't get deaths en route.
Is it that the whole point is just to do it, rather than to come up with some sort of scientific conclusion or to prove something that would interest the physicists?
If you take, for example, the expedition which we'll be setting out on next November, that expedition has 3 aims. On that expedition in Antarctica, we've been set a target that we must raise enough money to complete building a disease research centre. Now, last year in Siberia we raised, with the help of all the people who sponsored us at a penny a mile of our progress, £1.3 million. Well, that was a 480-mile journey. Next year it's 1,800 miles, so at a penny a mile we should raise £4.5 million, which together with last year's bit will be over £5 million to build the centre. So the charitable side of the expedition is one of the sides. The scientific side, which has been going on, the same scientific work for the last 5 expeditions, is coming to a head on this particular expedition. It's studying how much the human body can put up with when it's working extremely hard in extreme temperatures, but is not eating enough food. This is something which is of great interest to nutritionists and all sorts of other doctors and military people and so on and so forth. Next year, the expedition team will consist of 6 people. Only 2 of them actually on the travel team. The other 4 are scientists with a wealth of heavy equipment which has to be taken to the edge of the Antarctic so that the team members can be subjected to all the tests the day before they leave and the 2 days after they come back. It's no good if they eat anything when they come back famished, having lost 4 stone, before they go for all the tests. The scientific side, like the charity side, is vital. And then, of course, there is the physical challenge side, which to most armchair skeptics is something which can very easily be laughed at, and therefore we don't stress it anymore. In the old days, say 40 or 50 years ago, this was in itself sufficient.
Is there any one achievement you've not yet got under your belt that's still on the horizon? You haven't, I know, been to a pole unaccompanied or unsupported, in other words, without the help of dogs and without the help of machinery.
Yes, I've been to both poles, and so that's that. But in terms of getting to either one of them without support, we hope to get to the South Pole and back this year, and then in future years we'll think again about the North. Next year's goal, in Antarctica, is to complete what is a very testing journey, particularly in terms of planning, how the sledges that we have to pull should be designed, and how to take maximum calories with minimum weight. Last time I felt that we just didn't have enough food, and it was a very unpleasant experience, slowly starving whilst continually trying to move forward through the cold. This time we've upped the number of calories, but now we've got to keep going for 100 days on what we carry on day 1. That's in terms of fuel and food.
Well, the best of luck with that and all your other expeditions.
Thank you.
And thanks for talking to me today. My guest was Ranulph Fiennes, and later...
That is the end of Part 3. Part 4. talking about other people. You will hear extracts of 5 different people talking about other people. You will hear the series twice. For questions 29 to 38, choose the correct option, A, B or C.
To be honest, I still don't know whether the mechanic took me for a ride. I mean, I took the car in for a service and he talked about this and that fault when I thought it was basically running pretty well. Well, I had no way of knowing whether he was being straight with me or not because I don't know the first thing about it. I just had to take his word for it. What else could I do? If I'd told him I wasn't satisfied and taken it somewhere else, who's to say it would have been any better?
I wasn't very keen on the way the waitress treated me, to say the least. I mean, all I did was make a minor complaint about how long my order was taking, and she just turned round and said, "Well, if that's how you feel about it, why don't you go somewhere else? Can't you see I'm dealing with other people's bills?" Well, I can understand they get rushed off their feet at the busy times, but I don't think that justifies being so bad-mannered. And when it finally did come, and she was serving it out, you should have seen the nasty look she gave me. Charming, I thought.
The receptionist certainly doesn't give a very good impression to customers, if my experience is anything to go by. I mean, I phoned up to make a simple booking, and I said exactly what I wanted, but he didn't sound as though he was paying attention. And then he got it all wrong. When I got back to him and pointed this out, he said he'd sort it all out straight away. But then I didn't hear anything for ages. I checked, and it turned out that he'd forgotten all about it. Honestly. Well, all I can say is I wouldn't recommend staying there, if that's how the staff operate.
It wasn't as if I was asking for anything particularly tricky. All I was asking was for the sales assistant to change it or give me a refund. I had the receipt, but she looked at me as if I'd asked her for something totally impossible. I mean, at first, I thought she was pretending not to know what I was talking about, just to be awkward. But she really was as thick as she seemed. Well, I spelt it out for her, and eventually she just about got it and went off and got me another one. But really, you'd think a store like that could employ people a bit brighter than that.
Well, I kept trying to make arrangements with the builder, but he was never there when he was supposed to be. I mean, the job only needed a bit of finishing off, a bit of drilling here, a few nails there, but I could never get hold of him, and the whole thing dragged on far longer than it should have done. And when I did get in touch with him, we fixed up a time, but he didn't keep to it. I'm not saying he was no good. There was nothing wrong with the quality of what he did. It's just that I never knew whether he was going to turn up when he said he would or not.
That is the end of part 4.